Council meeting of September 5th, 2019. Calling this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll?
Councilmember Pittman? Here. Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Draper?
Here.
Councilmember Hatley? Here. Councilmember Goodson? Here. Vice Mayor Thompson? Here. And Mayor Reynolds?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I second that.
Motion carries.
All right, moving on to regular business. I'd like to remind everyone that if you'd like to speak on an item, you need to fill your card out before we start addressing the item so we can avoid circular conversation here. If you'd like to comment, please fill your card out. Item number 1, policy related to appointment authority of mayor.
Good evening, or good evening. I'm a creature of habit.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. As outlined in the staff report, Government Code 40605 provides a mechanism whereby that applies to general law cities where a mayor may make appointments to committees when the mayor is a separately elected individual. There is, of course, Oroville is a charter city. Rules that apply to charters, rules of general law cities apply to charter cities unless the charter has adopted an alternative rule. We have scoured the resolutions and ordinances of the city as far back as we can obtain them and have found no separately adopted policy, which under the code and under the law means that this rule for a general law city applies to the city of Oroville unless a separate policy is adopted. Because of recent circumstances, we thought it would be important to clarify and formally adopt a policy related to the authority of the mayor to make these appointments. What we're doing is we're codifying the rule for general law cities. That's what's proposed here for you. It is done by resolution, so it would be signed, it would be put in the records of the city, and it would become a formal policy of the city. It could be changed in the future if a future council wants to change it. It could, it can be modified accordingly, but we are proposing that, staff is proposing that the city adopt essentially the rules under 40605 of the Government Code. I will tell you there is an Attorney General provision that interprets 40605 that we're also incorporating as well. And that's outlined in the resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and following council's questions, it certainly would be appropriate to see if the public has any comments related to this proposal.
Mr. Huber, if we could, we'd like to amend the resolution that we spoke about yesterday. In item number 1 of the resolution, the last sentence, it says, "This appointment authority shall not extend to the Planning Commission, the Parks Commission, the Arts Commission, or the Citizen Oversight Committee related to Measure U, which shall be appointed by the majority vote of the council." We'd like to add the language, "This appointment authority shall not extend to citizen appointments to the Planning Commission, the Parks Commission, the Arts Commission." So we'd like to add 3 words, citizen appointment to, between to and the, so that it's clear that this is about appointing council members, not the citizens to those commissions or committees.
Yeah, and Mr. Legron and I did chat about that yesterday, and that is an appropriate modification.
Okay. Councilmember Goodson's in the queue.
For clarification purposes, Mr. Huber, So initial charter, under that initial charter, I'm just going to paraphrase, it does state that our city charter is based on a mayor weak and a council strong leadership, which means that there is no veto power, there is no unilateral decisions being made, and all decisions are voted on by the council. It is the council that is strong, and the majority will rule. There are instances where it is, the vote is contingent, and it is confirmed and approved by a supermajority, which is a 5-7 vote, because there are 7 council members sitting on the dais. With that being said, what is the unique difference? Because I know there's something in here that perhaps not all of us are looking at, and we don't have the legal verbiage or knowledge that you have. What is the difference between what this resolution and what is already stated in our city charter?
So the charter, and I appreciate the phrasing that you put on it. The charter essentially says every individual gets 1 vote. There are circumstances where there are some, cities that are set up that in their charter they have a strong mayor that has a veto power, over ordinances, so that the council can pass an ordinance or a resolution, and the mayor can simply veto it. And if there is no override to that by either a supermajority vote or a unanimous vote, then that ordinance doesn't go into effect. We don't have that in the city of Oroville. But when you look at 40605, it is literally a one-sentence clause that says cities that have a separately elected mayor, the mayor is entitled to make the appointments with the advice and again, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it right
The
in front of me.
advice and the
With
consent
the advice
of the
with the
council.
advice and consent of the council. What that means is similar to, and I'll use just the most recent Supreme Court nomination example, or any Supreme Court or any judgeship. The president nominates judges for the U.S. Court system, U.S. federal court system. The Senate gets to advise and consent. They get to either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. They don't get to say, well, okay, Steve was nominated, but we don't like Steve. We're going to put in,
Right.
Jeff, or we're going to put in Sally. They don't get to substitute a person that they want. They either get to say yes or no, and that's it. They can say no as many times as they want, but that's how it works. And that's essentially because there has been no separate rule related to the city of Oroville. And I gave this advice back in 2013. We found in the minutes, this code applies to the city because there is no separate rule. We're simply codifying it so that nobody has to go look and remember that there's this section in the government code. They only need to go to this resolution to find it.
All right, thank you. I also have a part 2 to my question. It states that appointments shall be for 1 year unless otherwise announced by the mayor, and it does stipulate prior to the assignment. Now, here's my concern, because there was a blanket precedents that had been set on March the 19th. And that's a real concern of mine in the future, because and I need you to clarify, in the event that someone is just removed and as you stated, because they don't like so-and-so, what is the restriction in place from this day forward that can no longer happen again?
I don't know that there is one, to be very
Well-
candid with you. Let me, if you want to add in some language, then you're certainly welcome to make a motion to amend that. This is, unlike the federal judicial system where judges are appointed for life, these appointments are for 1 year. And they can be modified and again, they can be modified at the request of the mayor with the advice and consent of the council.
Right,
That's,
right.
you know,
So ergo is a concern.
Well,
Thank you.
I appreciate
I
that concern.
appreciate
and-
your answer.
And look, my job is to tell you what the state of the law is. I'm not telling you what policy should be.
Right.
That's your
Absolutely.
job.
We make the policy.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
Councilmember Hatley.
In item one, I asked for clarification. You touched on it, but, and it says, the last line, on page 4, the first, that's my pages anyway, but it says the role of the council is to advise and consent, then approve or reject. However, the council may not substitute its desired appointments for that of the mayor. Now, I read that one way, and the way I read it is that the council, if 5 people up here said, or 6 people up here said, this is who we want, you can't do that. The way that it has to come from the mayor.
According to the attorney, and I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off. According to the Attorney General's opinion that interprets this statute, that's what it says. It relates it to an advice and consent similar to that which is used for federal judges. If you want to change that, then this body has the ability to change that. What staff is suggesting and what I drafted here is simply codifying what the current state of the law is. That's it.
Yeah, I get it.
And I'm, again, it's a policy decision. If you want to set a different policy for this body, you're free to do that.
Okay,
And I want to be clear about that. You're free to set a different policy if you wish.
okay. Let me finish. Okay. Does that mean that, the way I read it then, if the mayor says, no, this is the way it's going to be, that's the way it is? Or does it mean that he has to come back and put somebody else's name in the mix? That's what I'm trying to get at here, because the way this reads, it reads to me that it doesn't matter what everybody would say. It would come back to, if that's what he wants, that's what he wants. And is that the intent of this, or is this not the intent? But, let me finish. But the way this is written depends on who's standing there and who's sitting here as to how they interpret it. Because I interpret it one way, you're telling me it's something else. But when push comes to shove, whether it's an hour from now, next week, next month, you may come in and go, you know what? No, it's this way now. Or it's that way, or whoever's sitting in the attorney's seat can come in and go, no, that's not what it means. And I learned a long time ago, and I've had a lot of dealings with attorneys and judges. And I will tell you that, and not on a negative, so it doesn't come out in the paper that I've had to do that, but what it is I learned very early on in life that the only attorney opinion that really counts is a guy sitting way up above everybody else wearing a black robe. That's the only really one that counts. And so we can bring in 10 attorneys and get 10 different opinions of what this says. I've watched them, do it many times. So it's like, I just want to be clear on exactly what we're voting on here before I do a vote. And I'll be right honest, I haven't made up my mind yet how I'm going to vote on this.
Let me use a hypothetical to address your scenario. If the mayor, whoever's in the mayor's seat, appoints person number 1, and the council says person number 1 is not acceptable, the mayor at that point has an option. The mayor can either, and again, I'm speaking very candidly, the mayor can either, work to get someone to change their vote to say, yes, person number 1 is okay, or the mayor has to find person number 2. And if the council says no to person number 2, then the mayor needs to find person number 3. It's not, well, the mayor gets what the mayor wants and that's how it's going to be. The position isn't filled until the council approves it. And how we've set it up is so that it's approved by an affirmative vote of the council. It has previously been done in decades past by acclamation. There was no affirmative vote. We did find in several years where there were votes, affirmative votes. This makes it crystal clear. It has to be an affirmative vote of the council. It is not going to be done by acclamation. So to answer your question, it isn't the mayor gets what the mayor wants and that's how it is. The council has to confirm that. Now, if person number one is rejected by the council, then the mayor either needs to convince someone to change their vote or get person number two, or person number three, or person number four, until someone is satisfactory to fill that, for the council to approve them to fill that spot.
But again, interpretation, if you look at this, that's not what that says to me.
Well, I understand that, but that's why we included the Attorney General's provision in here. When you read the Attorney General's provision in conjunction with a statute, it is pretty clear. That's how it works. And now we have it, and now we also have it on video record and audio record of the city that that's how it works. So it'd be pretty hard to back away from it at this point.
Thank you.
Are you done, Councilman? I'd like to speak on that too, because I've watched the videos and listened to the audios of these experienced council members that have been here for a couple of years, and it was always done the exact way that it was done a couple months ago, and they eagerly and enthusiastically accepted it. So why is it such a big deal now? Because they never worried about a vote. They never worried about any of that. So I'm curious as to why it's a big deal now.
I can
But
answer that.
Well, you're not in the queue. Councilmember
when you're
Pittman,
done.
please.
Thank you. I'm on? Yeah, I'm on. And it has been done for decades in the previous past method, but I was in researching this particular thing, and I appreciate the city attorney's discovery of this, the section 40605, which was a government code that applied to general law cities, not charter cities. And that, I believe it went back to all the way 1974, 72, something like that.
Yeah, 71, I think, was when it was adopted.
So as adopted as a general law, it really didn't go on the radar of a charter city to even look at. But then the Attorney General came back with the opinion, as you stated, that it does in fact apply to general or charter cities. And I look at this as part of the problem in the legal profession, is the judge makes a determination ruling, and then none of us know that that has any effect on any of us until we have some issue where we have to research it. It's kind of like the Attorney General's opinion, then we all have to sit and monitor all these, that does it apply to us, and that kind of thing. So I appreciate the fact that it brings some clarity to the discussion, and I think it brings something very simple to look at. I also look at, there's another procedure when we have a vacancy on the council. Then the council has an opportunity to vote for the applicants that would apply for that. And then if there's no deciding vote, I think it's in 30 or 60-day period, then at the end of that period, then the mayor has a period of time to make the actual appointment. So there is a process here that we've had for a lot of the different things, and I've seen that actually work 2 or 3 times in the past. I applaud this situation here where we actually bring clarity to this process, and thank you very much. And I think it's one of the examples that so many government codes are passed that we just don't have time to look at them all every time that they come about.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I will tell you, I can't, you know, if I had a time machine and I could go back, there are a lot of things in life I'd change, but I don't have that. And
Right.
so the next best thing I can do is, let's bring some clarity to this situation. I can't fix yesterday, but I can certainly fix tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of this, is to bring some clarity to it, so that when someone comes and asks, hey, what is the procedure? We only have to look to our own resolutions to find
Right.
it.
Very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you. I wanted to piggyback off of the concern that the mayor had in regards to no one had pumped the brakes on the previous decision in regards to council, city council committee appointments. And if my memory serves me correctly, at the March 19th meeting, the council was not given the option to vote because it was not agendized as a voting item. It was simply stated that these are the committees, and then we moved on to committee meetings. And so I think what's vitally important is that this never happens again, that the process cannot be manipulated nor misconstrued, and it must be by vote, consent, and approval of the council. On another note, in regards to policy, we, the council members, do set policy, and this is what we're trying to establish at this special meeting. Is policy approval and affirmation contingent upon a majority or a supermajority? And I think that's the concern that I have. When it's just a for vote, then this is a grave situation here. I believe that it should not be contingent on just 4 people. It must be a supermajority.
I'll take your question about the number of votes required. The government code provides that, and particularly even in a charter city scenario, that the majority vote rules the day in most circumstances unless the charter provides for, or unless the government code provides for a supermajority vote. Most policy decisions are simple majority issues. Some of the ones that require a supermajority that I can think of off the top of my head are things like not the adoption of a budget, but an amendment to a budget during the
Right.
fiscal year. Because then you're changing the course from what was, previously set in the adoption of the budget. But the adoption of the budget is by a simple majority. So again, I appreciate your comments. I will tell you this, the standard for this, and I don't know whatever the vote will be or what the outcome will be, but for policy decisions of this nature, it is a simple majority required to approve it.
But the city has a right to make an amendment to that.
Of course.
Yes, to a
Policies-
supermajority vote.
Policy decisions are never set in stone.
Right.
They can be changed.
Right.
I do want to address one item that you raised. What occurred on March 19th was agendized in the same manner that it was agendized on March 5th and on February 19th. They were all agendized in the same manner. Whether I'm not going to get into it, and I do not want to have the discussion about is that sufficient or not sufficient. What I will tell you is they were all done the same way. This outlines, if you notice, actually it's not this one, it's the next item, but I'll dig into it for just a moment. The way that this is agendized on the agenda as item number 2 will be how I anticipate seeing it in the future with the staff report to include the list of positions. That's going to be my direction in the future so that it is abundantly clear. I can't help yesterday, but I can certainly help tomorrow.
So I just wanted, for clarification purposes, so what you're saying is in the event that this scenario were to happen again, that this item would be agendized by clearly stating this is not just about changes in appointments, it is about removal, so that because just to say that it's on the agenda is very misleading to the public, but once you put it out there that this has to do with a potential removals, then that's a whole different animal, and you would certainly be getting people to weigh in.
I will,
So I'm asking.
If it'd be okay with the council member, I'd like to address that in the next item, because that is germane to the next item and not
All
this
right,
one.
thank you.
I do have a response to that.
I
and
know you do.
and
I know you do,
and
and I appreciate that.
And I want to address it, but I'm trying to keep these sort of within the framework of what we're talking about.
Right, which is the policy.
I'd like to comment on something that was said about the word manipulation was brought up. I think that's pretty funny because this voting process was offered to these council members months and months ago, and they declined it simply because they couldn't dictate the outcome. So manipulation, yeah, I would say there was some involved. Try to be very clear and open about all this. And it's amazing to me that it's okay to change the policy from one meeting. Wait a minute, let's go back when the other meetings were done exactly the same way. Let's change it then. It's interesting to me that they want to pick a certain date. It's not manipulation. Yes, that is going on. This was offered a long time ago, so we could have saved ourselves a lot of hard road here. Councilmember Draper.
I just want to clarify here on number 2. It says a vote of the council shall be taken. And it's my understanding that the charter says.
We're on
that-
number 1.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about number 2 on number 1.
Okay, but we'll get on number 1.
I'm on number 1. At any rate, it's my understanding that the charter says that there should be a 5 out of 7 supermajority vote if there are changes to the budget or if there are appointments or removals from committees. So should this not say a supermajority vote or a 5-7 vote of the council shall be taken? Shouldn't it be specific?
I'm happy to insert the word majority vote. I will tell you, I believe that's a misreading of the charter where it says a 5/7 majority is required for, I just do. I mean,
How could that be a misreading? It says it in plain English.
let me, if you'd like, I'm happy to get the plain English and have that discussion.
Go ahead.
But I think that relates to the next item, not this item. As to this item, if you want to insert the word, if you'd like to make a motion to insert the word, a 5/7 vote of the council shall be taken, that's fine. If you'd like it to be a majority vote of the council, that's fine. When it says a vote of the council, that means majority. But
Right.
if you'd like to offer an amendment to, that it be a supermajority, then you can
Well,
certainly make that.
I would feel better because that's what the charter says, and I think that we should go by that first and foremost. And as for the mayor's comment about why March 19th was unique, we feel that a vote would have been helpful at that time. And our concern is that it hadn't been done before, a removal of people from committees. And so it was totally unexpected. And as I said, it wasn't customary once people have been appointed, as we were, to be removed.
I'd like to comment on that. It was, the council members removed themselves without agendizing anything or notifying anyone but me. So I don't know why it would be unique for the person in authority to remove them when they had removed themselves without being on an agenda. It seems that if someone else makes a motion or a move on something, then it has to be very regimented with new policy. But if things are going in a certain direction, then it's okay to do it with a text or a flip of a phone. So I'm pretty stymied over this. So, Councilmember Goodson.
But before we move on, actually, I'd like to address Councilmember Draper's comments. In the charter, Article 6, Section 1, which is entitled Officers and Employees, it says, most of the way down, except as otherwise provided in this charter, where the appointment of any officer, assistant, deputies, clerks, or employees is vested in the council, the appointment and removal must be made by a 5/7 vote of the members. This is relating to vacancies on the city council, vacancies in officers such as city administrator, city clerk, those, quote, offices where the council is in charge with putting someone in place. That's not for appointments to committees or boards or commissions. That relates to, and again, looking at the charter, Article 6, Section 1 is entitled Officers and Employees, and Article 6 itself is only related to officers and employees. That's what that refers to. The 5/7 requirement is for if there's a vacancy on the council, for putting somebody in that vacancy. If there's a vacancy in a position, an employment position, that the council has the authority to place, that's what that refers to. It does not refer to committees, commissions, boards. And I'll pick the first one that comes to the top of my head, the Planning Commission. That doesn't apply to the Planning Commission. And there is a separate section in the charter that talks about the Planning Commission. Had it required a 5/7 vote, it would have been specifically enumerated there. Now, that's an academic discussion. This is a policy decision, and if the council would like to add the 5/7 supermajority, the council's welcome to do that. You have all of the options available to you as the council. So you're not prohibited from doing that just because it's not outlined in the charter. If Councilmember Draper, if you'd like to make a motion, if it's approved by the council, it'll be in there.
Are you up?
Yes, thank you. This is specifically about policy, number one. And I believe that as I see how this discussion is going, we can be here all day. And as Bill Lagrone puts it, it's an ongoing circular conversation. So with that being said, I'm going to refrain from piggybacking or addressing things that other council members have put out there. But I will say that I would like to see an amendment to this resolution where it would state that this vote is contingent upon a supermajority 5/7 vote.
Councilmember Smith.
Addressing the supermajority, I think the reason that typically you see in most decisions a simple majority is to avoid a lot of deadlock, because as I already stated, we could be here a long time. And even within that discussion of officers, those types of appointments, requiring a supermajority, if there is a deadlock, as we had just recently, that after, I believe, 60 days, it defaults back again to the mayor's decision. And my concern with setting this as a policy for supermajority, especially as it pertains to a plethora of various committees and appointments, we could get drowned in that. So, and then once again, if we could not muster the supermajority, we'd be back with the mayor making that decision ultimately anyway. Only thing we would then have is a delay of that individual being appointed to that particular committee. So I think in the end, I don't know if it really, and I understand what the goal here is to have, a ratification or an endorsement by the majority of the council, and I appreciate that. However, I don't know if it ultimately achieves the goal you're intending. I think that we could end up spending an inordinate amount of time trying to vet out and sort this out. And I don't know if that necessarily achieves the objective of the council. So I would be very concerned about that. Though I do appreciate and respect where you're coming from. I just don't know if it ultimately achieves that goal in mind as it pertains to the supermajority versus a simple majority, because the charter's provision is it would go back to the mayor ultimately anyway.
Councilmember Draper.
And first of all, I'd like to state that I have never had a problem with the mayor, either Dahlmeyer or Reynolds, making appointments to committees. That's their area. It's not a big deal. Where the concern comes in here and where the supermajority might be helpful is when people are removed from committees. And that doesn't happen very often. But when it does, I would think that it would qualify for a 5-7 vote, so that everybody is in agreement that those people should be removed. That's just my opinion on that.
Thank you. I'd like to comment on that. So a person can remove themselves with a text message, but in order for the mayor to do it, we have to have a big meeting. That's interesting to me. Councilmember Pittman.
As far as the supermajority issue goes along, the reality is the supermajority means the minority rules. And the simple majority, the 50% majority, doesn't have any effect. So I'm against the application of the supermajority in this policy making. In fact, I'm against the whole supermajority issue, because the reality is if 3 don't like it and 4 do like it, the minority rules. And that's not the way our government's set up. The majority rules this country, our cities, our districts, throughout everything we do. And I would have no inclination to support a supermajority vote to this policy. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more comments from the dais, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Mr. Mayor, I do have 4 speakers. First speaker is Marlene Del Rosario, and then Bill Bynum, and then Tasha Levinson.
Hello. Council, when I was sitting on the dais, District Attorney Ramsey came in and told us that we had violated the Brown Act by not giving 72-hour notice of a meeting. It was a special meeting, an emergency meeting. I did not receive 72-hour notice of this meeting. The public did not. So I'm concerned about the legality of it. Is this a violation of the Brown Act? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, while I don't typically respond to comments, I do want to respond to the legal issue that was raised in the comment. Special meetings are authorized by the council, are authorized by the government code to be called within 24 hours. What DA Ramsey said when he came was that an item was added to an agenda that was already published at the council meeting. That item was added by a vote of the council, and he came, and again, I'm not going to get into whether the adding of that item was right, wrong, indifferent. His opinion was that adding that item to the agenda at the meeting was a violation of the Brown Act. That was the DA's opinion. The DA's opinion was not that it was a special meeting and there wasn't 24-hour notice, or that there wasn't 72-hour notice for a special meeting. Those were separate scenarios. I will tell you, we have followed the government code in posting this agenda, in notifying all the parties that need to be notified of this special meeting, and has been posted in all the places that comply with the law. We have complied with the Brown Act as to the special meeting.
Next speaker.
William Bynum, and then Tasha Levinson, and then Sherry Bunker.
Thank you for the time. It seems obvious to me that a position that's supposed to be nonpartisan has become extremely partisan. And something that was never done before, removing people from committees, now is being done. I think it's a bad direction for this city council to go in, start making everything partisan. And when somebody gets elected to office, they should be able to represent those who elected them, and to be blatantly removed with no real cause, with made-up causes as far as I can see, that's a terrible example, terrible precedent, and I'm kind of appalled that it's gone on, and it seems to me that the position you're taking is to continue in that direction. And so I'm just letting you know that I think you're making a a terrible decision and setting a bad example for the city. Thanks.
Tasha Levinson, and then Sherry Bunker.
Good morning. I've been listening really carefully, and as nearly as I can tell, you are still going to be under the government code rulings and the Attorney General's opinions on that, which could change by doing this just by resolution. If you want to have something that applies truly to you, where you could just look to one place, you're going to have to actually do this as a charter amendment and do it that way. I've listened very carefully to Art Hatley's comments, which I thought were exceptionally well made on this, where I think you want to, with whatever you do, have an actual little example. Maybe perhaps using Mr. Huber's words of mayor can suggest person one if that does not get the vote, whether it be majority, supermajority, whatever you choose it to be, then it would have to go to person two getting offered the position, something like that, as an actual example, saying this is intended to clarify the meaning of this. The second thing I want to say is that as a member of the audience, I can see the tension back and forth between different positions. I really hope you will take this as a chance to say, okay, we're going to clarify the rules. These are the rules that we're going to live by, whether we liked them or not. These are the new rules. We're going to live by them, and we're going to let the past be the past and go forward just living by the rules. I really think all of you have exceptional talents, and that I hope that those will be to the pleasure and benefit of this entire community through committee appointments all across the board. Thank you.
Sherry Bunker is the last public speaker card I have.
Good morning, Council.
Hold on. Oh.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity. I've been sitting through these council meetings probably since 2006. I've missed, I think, 4 since that time. You all have the best interest of this city at heart. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what your agenda is. You all have the best interest of this city at heart. You see that in the votes. When it means something to the city, you're all 7-0. For the little nitpicky stuff, you're divided. Every council is that way. There's this many on this side and this many on that side. Every council I've seen. When I was on council, Dave and I were normally on opposite sides every time. But when it came to the important stuff, we were there together. You people are the same way. If you make a change, somebody's going to be removed and somebody's going to be put on. So I don't understand why the big issue about removing. In this case, I do understand because it was just like a big eraser came by, and when you look at the chart right now, there's Art, Draper, nothing, Goodson, nothing. It looks bad. It's perceived bad. And I'm sure that if you go through and you look at who made reports for the last 2 years, you'll see the majority of those reports were made was Goodson and Draper and Marlene. The rest of them didn't always do reports. So that's something you need to look at. There were reports done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the last of the speakers?
Mr. Mayor, that is the last blue card I have for this item.
Looking for a motion on item number 1.
Mr. Mayor, it might be appropriate to ask on this item, just given the sensitivity of it, if there are any other public speakers who have not turned in a speaker card.
Are there any other public speakers who have not turned in a card?
Thank you.
I make a motion that we adopt this item as agendized, and I want to be specific with the simple majority.
And as amended.
As amended.
Thank you.
Let me be clear. When you say as amended,
As amended
Tom
by.
was just pointing to Bill LaGrone's
Right, Bill
amendment,
LaGrone with the-
which adds in the words into paragraph 1, adds in the words citizens appointments to on the first, second, third line from the bottom, in between the words "to" and "the," where it references the Planning Commission.
Exactly.
Before, okay.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. You got a second it, or?
I'll second the motion, but I'll
Okay.
also lean to the question.
Councilmember Smith would like to speak.
Right now, I'll vote no on it, because I want to add something to it. So, I don't know if I can say that or not. Yeah. Okay.
You can say whatever you like.
Okay. I think that what I wanted to add was some language to item number 2, this, the appointment shall be for 1 year. I think because this is an inaugural, we're starting off kind of in the backside of summer. I think that we should have a date set when this is renewed. So the first council meeting in January, and that including any appointments that you're going to do today, that anniversary on this first year, then that would expire. So in the first year of this new policy, that all these appointments will expire in January 2020, and new appointments will need to be made. Is that something that's, you're looking at, I see that look,
Yeah,
so.
that actually would be an appropriate thing to, and I'm going to presuppose something, but if this passes in some fashion, that might be something that would be appropriate for the next item.
Okay.
If and when appointments, and again, I'm presupposing, but it's always dangerous to do that. If some action is taken as to item number 2, to utilize the last clause where it says unless otherwise announced by the mayor, perhaps if we continue on this trajectory, that the first round of appointments under this new policy be with a hard deadline on them, or with a fixed date at the end, so that then annually it could just be renewed in January, which would coincide with elections and the swearing in of new council members on the dais.
With that, I mean, I'm fine amending my motion, even though we have a second. However, I'm not really in favor of January. For example, you get a new mayor, and they just come in for them to have some time to look over. So, February, or, one of the later months, as opposed to somebody just getting in right there, and the first thing I have to do is figure out appointments. I mean, obviously, they were elected in November, but at least some time to get their feet in the ground and some stability before they're making those decisions.
I'd like to comment on that. And that's exactly what happens when a mayor's elected anyway. As soon as they come in, they're handed a list of things that have to be done. I believe there's 31 committees, and figured out who you want where. So there's a lot of things thrown at you when you first come in. I'm in agreement. It's a lot. That's why I waited for a couple of months.
The end of February, does that work? The last meeting in February? That gives them technically, potentially 4 meetings, first, second in January, and first and second in February, so that'd be.
Would you, let me ask again, policy question. Would you like something in here that says that all appointments expire in the February of each year unless renewed?
That's pretty simple.
I mean, I can certainly do that if that's the.
That's fine with me.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's good. That works. That's fine.
So to be technical, that's acceptable to the maker of the motion and the second?
Yes, sir. Well,
Yes, sir. Second.
Actually, give me
Okay.
10 seconds here, and because I want to read what. So what I would like to do is on the last sentence of bullet point number 2, or I guess it's number 2, it's not a bullet point. It currently says appointments shall be for 1 year, comma, unless otherwise announced by the mayor prior to the appointment. With what I heard from the motion here was, and what I have drafted is, appointments shall expire in February of each year unless otherwise announced by the mayor prior to that appointment. So if that's acceptable to you, then I would have you renew your motion as amended. And
that's a lot of wording. Yes, that's acceptable to me. if that's sufficient for this motion.
Yes on the second.
Yeah,
Nope.
again, what I talked about as far as the clarification on this.
We're voting.
You still have
I
erased,
can't, okay.
you still have comments yet, we're not voting yet.
Okay.
So-
Discussion under the motion.
Right. As far as the clarity on, it would go then to the second, third, whatever. I mean,
If,
how does that,
If-
how would you word that?
and again, I'll use this phrase, if it's acceptable to the council, I can add in an example under number 1 saying, example, and I'll use the example I just gave, that I believe that Ms. Levinson referenced, which is I can say, here's an example of how it would work. Person number 1 is nominated. If person number 1 is not approved by the council, then the mayor has the ability to either, get some votes changed or nominate person number 2. And if person number 2 is not accepted, then we move on to person number 3. I can write an example of that in here. If the motion wants to include the example I referenced at the dais, I will type up exactly what I said at the dais and put it in here.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
So your
Yes, sir.
motion includes
Yes,
that,
sir.
and your second includes that.
Yes, sir, there's a lot of scratching and writing and erasing here, but
That's what I do for a living. Any other comments?
Any other
No.
comments?
Now voting would be open.
Now it'd be appropriate to open the vote. Yep.
Motion carries.
Moving on to item number 2.
Good morning, council members. Now that the policy is in place, as we touched a little bit in our last discussion, there was some controversy that was raised by the actions taken on February 19th, March 5th, and March 19th. And I'm going to say this, and I don't feel a personal need to go into a lot of detail about that. I think it's been well discussed and hashed over. But now that we have a policy in place, I think it would be appropriate for the council to void the prior actions of February 19th, March 5th, and March 19th, all of them, wipe the slate clean, related to the appointment of members to the council on the various committees, commissions, and boards. That's one item. And then item number 2, for the mayor to make new appointments to various committees, commissions, and boards following the policy that was just set.
Okay. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this?
I have a question.
Happy to take any questions.
Okay. I'm looking, how many, in this, in the staff report here, the last paragraph, it says Citizens Oversight Committee. How many Citizens Oversight Committees do we have? Just the one, isn't it? Okay, but then back here, that we just did, says not the Citizens Oversight Committee, so.
That's where the language that the city administrator mentioned, it relates only to, and I'll use the reverse of that. This says, the policy that was just approved says, this appointment authority shall not extend to citizen appointments to the Planning Commission, the Parks Commission, the Arts Commission, or the Citizens Oversight Committee. There are several council member appointments on that committee.
Right.
So the policy would apply to the council members being put on that committee, but not to the citizens being put on that committee. The citizens who are put on that committee would still be through the normal application process, and the council would vote on as a majority as to which citizens are put onto that committee.
Okay, but that's not what it says. So how do we fix that so that, even though it's in the resolution, but now we're voting on something again, the next item?
Well,
and I know they're tied, I get it.
To
they're
clarify,
tied, but just to clarify so that there's no questions about it.
then to clarify, it would be, and I will do this in the future when this comes up, we should insert where it says Citizens Oversight Committee, right before the word citizens, we can put council member appointments to the Citizens Oversight Committee. That would clarify it.
Works.
Are you finished, Councilmember Hadley?
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the dais or comments? Having none, are there any public speakers?
I have one public speaker, William Bynum. He has stated he's going to pass, and I have no other speaker cards.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, given the sensitivity of it, it might be appropriate to ask, are there anybody who didn't get a chance to fill out a speaker card?
Is there anyone who didn't get a chance to fill out a card? Want to check outside, Bill? Okay, at this point, you want me to read the appointments?
Yeah, I would suggest getting a motion for item number 1 first,
Okay.
and let's take a vote on that.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 1 as agenda size.
I'll second.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item number 2. Do we have any questions on this? Or is this covered under the first?
No, this is covered.
Okay.
And again, I would suggest, Mayor, at this point, it's appropriate for you to make appointments to your suggested appointments to the committees, and then inquire if any council member has any comments, and then take a vote.
Okay, so how do you want, I want to make sure that everybody's happy here. Do you want me to read them all, or are we going to go through this one by one? I think it's one, read it all and one vote?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right. Item number 1, airport land use. David Pittman. Arts Commission. Primary is Linda Draper. Alternate is Eric Smith. BCAG. Butte County Association of Governments. Primary is Chuck Reynolds. Alternate is Scott Thompson. Butte County Air Quality Control Board. Primary is Chuck Reynolds. Alternate is Scott Thompson. Butte County Water Advisory Board. Primary is David Pittman. Alternate Eric Smith. Chamber of Commerce. Scott Thompson. Alternate David Pittman. Citizens Oversight Committee. Scott Thompson and Eric Smith as primaries, David Pittman as an alternate. Butte County Continuum of Care. Primary will be Eric Smith, alternate will be Linda Draper. Executive Committee, Chuck Reynolds, David Pittman, Eric Smith. League of California Cities, primary, Chuck Reynolds, alternate, Janet Goodson. Loan Advisory Housing and Economic Development, Chuck Reynolds, David Pittman, Eric Smith. Oroville Downtown Business Association, Eric Smith. Oroville Recreation Area Committee, ORIC. Primary is Art Hatley, alternate is Eric Smith. Supplemental Benefit Committee, Chuck Reynolds, Scott Thompson, David Pittman. Sewage Commission, Oroville Region, Chuck Reynolds, David Pittman. Sustainable Groundwater Management, primary is Janet Goodson, alternate is Art Hatley. Stage, Scott Thompson. Tourism, Eric Smith. Veteran Memorial Park, Art Hatley. Does anyone wish to comment on this?
Who are you talking to?
Either council or public.
Oh,
Dias will
public.
speak
Oh,
first.
okay.
Do we have any council members that would wish to comment?
Yes.
Councilmember Hatley?
I'm trying to figure out which, I missed it, I was writing. You listed, did you put me on ORAC?
Yes.
Okay, well, I have no desire to serve on ORAC.
I believe it was on your list.
What?
I believe it was on the list that you provided for
No,
committees.
it isn't.
It isn't? Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd suggest maybe we can just swap, and then Art can be the backup. As you know, I attend those meetings anyway,
Oh,
so I
okay.
mean, it'd just be easy for me to do that.
It's
And
a
I've
good
already
idea.
filled in for Art before, so that's not a
Okay.
problem.
It's a good idea. Oroville Recreation Area Committee, ORIC. Primary will be Eric Smith, alternate will be Art Hatley.
Not to,
There's anybody else?
sounds good. I can fill his seat if he doesn't want to do it.
I was gonna say, if you have, Mr. Mayor, if you have someone who would rather not be on a committee, but there's someone else who says they can fill in, again, up to you.
I agree.
Let me just to revisit that just for a moment, because Scott had a hesitation since we're discussing this. If there's someone else that would rather do that, because there is a little bit potentially for me once in a while conflict, because I do speak to ORAC, and in those cases, there's a little bit of an issue there potentially. So if someone else would,
I have a passion for it.
that's great.
Did you wish to speak, Councilmember Goodson?
Yes. As not everyone knows, but I do work a full-time job. I do have the ability to make some days fluid. I have served on the Loan Housing Advisory Committee. It's on a date and time that works very well for me.
We're on ORAC right now. We're trying to get it established. So if we could speak about ORAC and get this established, then we can move on to the next thing.
Certainly.
So, Scott, you want to be the primary and Eric will be the alternate?
Is it okay?
Do you have that, Jackie? Okay. Councilmember Goodson?
Yes, thank you. So I don't think I need to repeat myself. That is a committee that I've served on before. I believe that as a I'm also a strong advocate and representative of, as people know, it's no secret. It's been talked about on social media. I am an advocate for affordable housing. I also live in an area that is in dire need of that type of assistance. That was one of the reasons why I was voted into office by that specific constituent base. With that being said, I understand that there are 3 city council people that sit on that committee. I am open for someone I'm just open to a change in that committee. With that being said, it has also been decided that I am serving on 2 committees. With that being said, I am available to serve on that committee, which would make it 3.
I appreciate that. We have 3 council members that are representing that committee who are comfortable with where they're at. We've only been in place for a few months, so I don't think that anyone's willing to move. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Councilmember Draper.
Jackie, how many committees am I on at this time now?
Draper, it looks like you're on 2 committees, or one as a voting member and another as an alternate.
Okay, so essentially one committee where I actually am required to attend. Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions? Well, if there's no more questions from the dais, we'll take questions from the public. Do we have any speaker cards?
I do not have any blue speaker cards at this time.
Is there anyone who wishes to fill out a speaker card?
Can you add a 2 onto mine? Thank you.
Jackie, just one more quick question while she's getting ready. Have I reported each month as far as committees attended? Have I missed a month in reporting them?
In the reports that I ask for attendance, you have submitted every month, yes.
Mm-hmm. How many people submitted reports for attendance last month?
I believe your report is the only one that I received.
Thank you.
I would like to comment on that. Councilmember Draper, I have an email from you that you were only asking for 2 committees, and
Oh,
you
no,
stated personal
I-
reasons. So,
And then you put me on another, and I said the 3rd was fine. That would work because of when the meetings were and so on. 3 is fine.
Okay.
But if this is it, then this is it. But it does seem kind of astonishing for someone like myself who has attended all her meetings for the last over 2 years, has a bachelor's degree, and as people who know me and voted for me know that anything I do 110%. But I'm willing to take just the one if that is the way that it goes. Thank you.
you have 2 committees, Councilmember Draper. Ms. Bunker? And we have more comments from the dais here, I guess. Councilmember Smith?
Thank you. My concern was on ODBA with Eric's job, Council Member Smith's job. I don't know if that's appropriate. Just throwing that out there.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I do have another public speaker as well when you
Okay.
are ready.
I would also suggest that you finish the public, so you don't get in that circular discussion, so anybody else who wants to speak from the public, and then back to the dais.
Right. So we're looking for anyone who would wish to speak on this item. Please step up.
So Jason McClure.
For your time. Now that we've made all these changes, is this lawsuit that's been, the cloud over the city, is that now going to be eliminated with this new procedures that's going out and this special meeting? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll take that one, and I appreciate the question. I am never one to discuss litigation from the dais or from, from this position here. Remains to be seen.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith, if there are no more comments from the public, Councilmember Smith.
Yeah. I appreciate the comment from Ms. Bunker. Yeah, all of these have been discussed with the attorney as far as my role. And since it's just simply with, for example, the Downtown Business Association, I'm just there essentially as a liaison to listen to and report back. I make no decisions. I have no obligation to speak to, which is different with the ORAC, because I do have some commitments there, so I appreciate Scott stepping up. That does help clarify with that particular issue. And I have attended all of my appointments and committees except one, and I'm being on vacation. And then I just wanted to shout out to Councilwoman Draper and appreciate her continued steadfastness with the COC and all and being a part of the point in time and just sticking with. And I know this is kind of a difficult, touchy issue, but I think just from the humanity standpoint of having a passion for those that struggle with housing, that I do appreciate and respect her and her commitment to that. And this is, the mayor's going to revisit this now in February, and so perhaps at that time there may be a change with that. But I just wanted to point that out, and that I think that folks do see that, and do see your passion and your commitment. And it is appreciated, and you bring a lot of value to the table, a lot of detail out of those meetings. And so, I do appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goodson.
I just want to state for the record that I have been sitting on the dais for approximately, well, I'm going on 3 years. With that being said, for over 2 years, I served on approximately 6 to 7 committees, city committees, which did not include community committees. People know this is a passion for me. This is what I do. I eat it, I live it, I breathe it, and I sleep it. It's not going to change whether I'm sitting in this seat or anywhere else. I'm a people's advocate. I represent the needs of those that feel that they do not have a voice of representation. This is what I was voted in for. So moving forward, I am now being assigned to 2 committees. And Bill LeGrand, thank you, and to City Council. I would like to say that in the future, in the very near future, when we do discuss a revision in our charter, our ordinances, our policies, that we discuss this city not to be a city at large, but to be a city that is divided into districts. Because what I see right now and what has not changed is the representation is biased. That those cities that are represented by councilmen and women serving in specific districts is a much more viable plan, because each constituent, each community is heard and represented equally. And I believe that this is a change that needs to be implemented. The face of our community needs to, the council needs to reflect the face of the community. The community is extremely diverse, and we need to step up our game. So I am hoping that that can be a conversation, it could be a discussion, and we can start to make changes in a positive direction to include every culture, every gender, every race, and let the city council reflect that change. Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that. You can look back at the campaign, the election, and see who elected me. My constituents are very diverse, and from every race, every culture, a lot of support in every area of town. So, and I think that we've done pretty steady work in South Oroville, where I think that's where a council member is claiming to have a district. We've been over there on a steady basis. We had a broken piece of equipment, so we slowed down a little bit. But I think that there's good representation to the whole community. And I think that point's been made by several council members that we all need to represent the whole community. We can't pick sections and decide that that's where we're going to give all of our time. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, that's kind of a two-pronged comment. One is that the conversation about whether or not we should change the charter and have districts to have a different form of representation for our community. That's one conversation. But I just, on a personal note, the term biased, I personally take, with all due respect, a little bit of issue with that. I personally attend church in Southside. I've owned property in Southside. I think that it's extremely important that as a community that we do all that we can to help service and elevate that part of our town, because you know you're only as good as your weakest link. And if there are concerns in that, and I would assume you're kind of speaking to that part of our city. Well, and that's why I'm giving the caveat with the, that's why I did that. Because we can assume too much. But I just want, just in a general sense, as far as, you know, the concept of bias, I would hope that all of us do our level best to represent the community as a whole, and to find areas that need, you know, additional attention. And I would hope that we're all wired that way. I'm personally wired that way. And so again, I just want to speak to that. The term, when I hear the word bias, it kind of causes me to kind of react a little bit, respectfully, because I don't feel that represents me personally, and I would hope it would not represent the balance of our council. But we have a lot of work to do, and I hope that today we can kind of get past this and move forward as a unified council and make a difference on our town. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this is an important discussion, and I think it's very appropriate when it's agendized and talk about, for example, potential charter changes. It's really not agendized today.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, questions, poems? Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you. And that was the sole purpose of why I had brought that up. It wasn't to have a circular conversation, but in regards to bias, explanation for that word being, there are many cities, once they get to a certain level of population, occupancy in that city, then councils look at how each community can be equally represented. And so we understand why cities, when they get to a certain population base, then they start distributing certain communities under the representation of each council person. I believe that our city is getting to that point.
Stay with the agenda, please, Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, we can. And I was
Are there any-
simply addressing, hold on, what Mr. Lander had said. I am in total agreement that it does need to be agendized.
Wouldn't want to commit a Brown Act. Are there any more comments on this item, on this agenda?
If not, Mr. Mayor, it'd be appropriate for you, since they're your selections, for you to make a motion that they be approved and then have a second and a vote.
I make a motion that the committee assignments, as noted, be adopted.
I'll second that.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That adjourns this meeting. Next meeting, Tuesday, September 17th, 2019 at 5:30 PM.
Thank you, council.